How you doing? My name is Daniel Ramirez, and my study was on the impact of sports specialization on youth development. The purpose of the study was to identify if early specialization impacts youth's social, cognitive, and physical development. There's three central research questions. The first was, in which ways does early sports specialization impact youth's social, cognitive, and physical development? The second question was, how do children who specialize in one sport at an early age develop differently from peers who participate in multiple activities? The third question was, how do former athletes perceive sports specialization impact their development as an athlete? Now I'll be addressing my faith, values, and beliefs. My faith is ingrained in me, the belief that learning is a lifelong journey. Attempting to find the value in everyday occurrences ensures that each day can be useful in your attempt to reach your full potential. This willingness to pursue learning requires one to be humble enough to accept your weaknesses and the fact that you have a lot to learn. A verse that stands out to me is Romans 12:2, which says, "Do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." It is this refusal to conform that drives me to pursue learning opportunities. A complacent individual not only cheats themselves, but cheats those around them. Therefore, it is incredibly important for individuals in influential roles to constantly seek out ways to improve. I believe teachers and coaches are in these roles that have great influence on youth development and therefore cannot be allowed to conform. As a teacher and coach, I see the importance of presenting the best me to my students and athletes. Since the student population is constantly changing, I must remain open to the most current research regarding childhood development and teaching and learning methods. This research proves very educational to me, as it requires me to do extensive research on childhood development and the effects of diversification and specialization. How you doing? We will now be looking at the research that has supported this study. So the first research we will be looking at is Vern Seefeld. Now, Vern Seefeld identifies the benefits that come from participation in a diverse set of activities. He utilizes past research on specialization and diversification, but he really shapes many of his theories on research by Vygotsky and Piaget. He emphasizes how their theories really emphasizes the role that development plays on youth's development of skills. So when Piaget's theories suggest that the child's environment shapes the type of skills they develop. So when a child has numerous diverse input, they develop numerous diverse skills. When they have minimal and similar input, the child will not develop a diverse set of skills. Seefeld really focuses on the physical aspect of this. He utilizes a pyramid to describe the necessity for youth to develop a diverse set of fine motor skills. So athletes who specialize in one sport at an early age develop a much narrower set of fundamental motor skills than their counterparts who participate in multiple sports. So when an individual participates in multiple sports, they develop a wide base of fundamental motor skills that they can then develop more advanced skills after. So a wide base of fundamental motor skills early in life serves as a solid foundation for future movement activities. So this theory really supports the idea of diversification as being beneficial to physical development. You can really carry this concept over to cognitive and social development as well. The next research we'll be looking at is Erickson, Crump, and Tesh Romer. This research is really the backbone for specialization. Erickson, Crump, and Tesh Romer can be credited with empowering specialization as being necessary to achieve elite success. Their research of elite violinists turned up the framework for early specialization, as it found that a correlation between time spent training and success occurred. They assessed current and past levels of deliberate practice in 3 groups of elite violinists. They divided the violinists into 3 groups. They labeled them best, good, and music teacher. Through the analysis of violinist diaries, as well as interviews and questionnaires they conducted, the researchers were able to allocate how much time each violinist committed to their craft. Through this, they found a correlation between skill level and practice time to exist, as the two best groups of young violinists practiced almost 3 times longer than the music teacher. With these findings, Erickson et al. Proposed the following theoretical framework in support of early specialization. The framework consists of 3 distinct phases in which an individual would invest a minimum of 10 years. The first phase, an athlete is introduced to the select activity and perhaps one other activity. The second stage, an increase in practice and seriousness by the athlete occurs. And the final stage, the athlete makes a full-time commitment to one activity, training year-round in highly intense practices. The last research that we will be looking at right now is Butcher, Linder, and Johns. So the following study provides a great overview of one of the possible effects of specialization. It provides an idea of how many athletes lose enjoyment and develop a negative opinion for specialization. They conducted a 10-year retrospective investigation of dropout from competitive youth sport. They had 2,272 10th grade athletes complete a sport participation profile in which they would include all the sports they have participated in since first grade. For each sport, participants reported whether they were still involved or had withdrawn. For each sport they had withdrawn from, participants were asked additional questions. These questions identified the years competed, training details, and most importantly, the reason for withdrawing. They found that during early stages of participation, lack of enjoyment was the most prevalent reason for athletes to withdraw from the sport. This study suggested that the type of training promoted by the early specialization approach might not provide the essential levels of enjoyment necessary for the athlete to make a long-term commitment. Now we will be looking at our research methodology. The study was a quantitative research which participants completed in an online survey. Participants for the study were 22 to 57 years old from a master's water polo team located in San Diego, California. The majority of its members played water polo at the collegiate level, with some training at the national team level. This gave them the status as elite athletes, giving us the opportunity to gain personal insight on their training practices. All athletes participate in some form of year-round training in early childhood or adolescence, while a significant portion participated in multiple sports. So like I was saying, while a significant portion participated in multiple sports in early childhood prior to specializing. These childhood training practices make them appropriate for the study, as we are looking into differences between the specialized and diversified athlete. The survey consisted of 2 sections. The first section is composed of 11 demographic questions. The second section is composed of 10 Likert skill questions, which assess participants' overall impression on early sports specialization and diversification, as well as asking 3 specific questions on the perceived impact specialization had on their social, cognitive, and physical development. Approval for the study was granted by the club's program director. I was also granted access to the Yahoo mailing group. Through this group, I emailed participants an introductory statement in which I requested their participation. Included in this email was the informed consent form. Consent was given when the members clicked on the link taking them to the IESS survey. The data collection process took approximately 2 weeks from the initial email. Once surveys were received, an online analysis tool through SurveyMonkey was utilized, and graphs were made through Excel. So now we will be looking at our results. So the results suggest that early specialization can have a positive influence on one's social, cognitive, and physical development. Here we see that the majority of participants agreed that specialization had a positive influence on their social, cognitive, and physical development. In the following slide, we then see how individuals who diversified may differ in their development from individuals who specialize. To investigate how individuals who specialize differ in their development from peers who diversified, 2 Likert questions were posed, as well as demographic data was utilized. The first statement investigated how athletes perceive sport participation in numerous activities as a youth aided their development to an elite athlete. Here we see that 18 participants agree that specialization aided their development. And then in assessing if specialization aided the development of a wide base of skills, we have 13 participants agreeing that specialization aided the development of a wide set of skills. So these results suggest that diversification throughout childhood and into adolescence can aid one's development to an elite athlete. And then we also have data suggesting that specialization aids in the development of a wide base of physical skills. In investigating how former athletes perceive sports specialization affected their development as an athlete, 5 questions were posed. The first investigated if sports specialization during childhood is perceived to be important to achieve athletic success. Here we see that 18 disagreed, finding specialization during childhood to not be very important. In investigating sports specialization during adolescence is important to achieve success. We see kind of flip-flop where 15 agreed. The next statement, investigative specialization played a big role in the success the participants experienced, and 16 agreed, finding specialization to have played a big role in their success. Excuse me. The fourth statement, investigative participants felt that without specialization they could have achieved the same success. 10 disagreed, believing they would have achieved the same success had they not specialized. 9 agreed, and 1 was not considered as they did not specialize. The final statement investigated that elite athletes recommend youth specialize in one sport. Not surprisingly, we had 18 disagree, suggesting that they would not recommend youth specialize. So while athletes do not recommend they specialize, their responses suggest that specialization does improve skill development. Participant responses also suggested that if youth was to specialize, it should occur in adolescence, not childhood. We will now be discussing our results in relation to the research we previously mentioned. So we can see that the results suggest that early specialization can have a positive influence on one's social, and cognitive, and physical development. This contradicts Vern Seefeld and Jean Cote's research, which suggests that specialization does not provide ample opportunities in diverse environments to develop a wide base of skills, as well as provided enough opportunity in different environments to develop socially and cognitively. Research was also supportive of John Cote's diversification framework as effective at developing skill sets to an elite level. We see that 3 out of the 5 participants who compete at the semi-pro, professional, or national team level participated in 4 or more sports during adolescence. Our research also supports the notion that diversification allows for the strengthening of numerous skills and muscles that aid in the development of a well-rounded athlete. This is supportive of Vern Seefeld's research. We see 18 participants agree that diversification as a youth aided the development into an elite athlete. Once again, we see some research, we see some data that contradicts Seefeld and John Cote's belief that training one sport does not enable development of a wide set of skills, as 13 participants credit specialization with aiding the development of a wide set of skills. Yet this must be taken with a grain of salt, as 19 participants participated in multiple activities during childhood, and all 20 participants participated in multiple activities during adolescence. So what this is saying is that no participant in this study actually specialized in one activity throughout their athletic career. Our data also contradicts Erickson et al.'s theoretical framework that suggests youth specialize early in childhood to increase the benefits of deliberate practice in adolescence. Our research turned up that 18 participants claimed to have played a minimum of 3 sports. Considering their success achieved, it is kind of showing that specialization in one sport is not necessary to reach the highest levels of competition. There's further support for Jean Cocteau's theoretical framework for diversification, in which youth specialize later in adolescence after years of diversification. We see 15 participants agreed that specialization during adolescence was important, while only 2 agree that specialization during childhood is important to reach elite levels. So overall, we received some conflicting data. None of our data wholeheartedly supports or contradicts either of the frameworks as being more effective. Overall, we have gained insight on diversification as being just as effective as specialization in leading to elite success, as well as observed our demographic data in many of our elite athletes having participated in a diverse set of activities and yet still achieve success at the elite levels. So, our implications, future recommendations, and future research. So I believe that this research will prove useful for parents, coaches, and athletes in making informed decisions on their training practices. This research provided some insight on the effectiveness of both specialization and diversification, as well as provided some review on the potential ramifications of specialization. Some recommendations for future study would be to conduct a longitudinal study to accumulate more in-depth data. In order to achieve more in-depth data, we would also utilize multiple surveys and more specific questions. In order to get a better understanding of the specific ways that specialization impacted development, as well as specific ways that diversification has impacted development, I believe that survey populations of individuals who solely specialize and solely diversified should be utilized. When we have these two populations with completely different backgrounds, then it's easier to compare both backgrounds and understand how each background individually affected their development. For further research, I would recommend that an individual study is utilized for each form of development. What I mean is that that cognitive development or the effects of specialization and diversification on cognitive development should be its own study. The effects of specialization and diversification on social development should be its own study. And the effects of specialization and diversification on physical development should be its own study. When this is done, then you will get a better understanding of how they have impacted their development. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please post them below. I appreciate your feedback.